Yeah, my name is Peter Goweski, and I have the privilege of being the pastor here at Hope City, and it is a great opportunity to see you today. And we are in the midst of our series called Summer Playlist, where we have been going behind the scenes, kind of exploring behind the lyrics and what are we singing and what does this mean and how does this apply to our lives. And so today we're continuing in that series with the song that we just sang called Firm Foundation. And we're talking about where does this come from in God's word and how does it apply. And last week we talked about how music moves us. That fundamentally, music is something that moves us and shapes us, and it moves our emotions, it moves our memories, and it also moves our culture. But music also shapes our faith. And we know this, and I emailed you guys about 2 weeks ago, and I said, hey, what are some of your favorite songs? And I got some great responses. Some of you, we talked about the songs that you loved, and I never heard of this one, but there's a song called Silent Morning. Anybody heard of Silent Night? Yeah, well, there's a Silent Morning. There's a song called 4 Days Late. Apparently that's, after you miss the silent morning and then the night, and then 3 days later. There's Hotel California, somebody said. Simple Man, and Lion, Gratitude, and Rescue by Lauren Daigle. I enjoyed hearing your favorites, but one of them caught me off guard. Somebody wrote back and they said, my favorite song is Happy Birthday. And I was like, are you 6? Right? Like, this is what I was thinking. And so I kind of wrote back, I was like, hey, well, why? What makes Happy Birthday your favorite song? And he schooled me, really. He schooled me. He says, when you sing Happy Birthday, you're joining in and to sing about somebody else, even sometimes when you're not invited to the party. Ever sing along with somebody at a restaurant and be like, oh, happy birthday, man, that's so great. When they're being embarrassed by the wait staff and all that stuff. And then he said, and you're always celebrating another person's life when you sing it, which when you think about it, and this is where I was like, oh, isn't that loving your neighbor? Just like Jesus told us to? So, Happy Birthday and Jesus Loves Me. 2 songs that go together apparently now. So, but here, I do have a bone to pick with all of you who sing Happy Birthday. Like, this is a serious thing. Like, I talk about, you can ask anybody in my family, they'll tell you this. Can we please sing it a little bit more upbeat? Like, it's not in a minor key, right? Like, this is supposed to be Happy Birthday. And some of you are like, it's like a dirge. Like, Happy birthday to you. Like you're hoping it's a happy birthday. No, come on, like, let's go. Another person wrote back and they said, the song that I love is Simple Man by Leonard Skinner. And I talked to somebody this morning, they're like, that's my song too. And they said it sort of summarizes their life's ambitions with lyrics like, oh, take your time, don't live too fast. Troubles will come and they'll pass. You'll find a woman, you'll find love. Don't forget, son, there's someone up above. And see, music moves us. We connect with lyrics. Last week, Scott, who is he's not in the back today, but he typically is in the back serves on the tech team. He mixed up this mega mix of different artists. We had Adele, we had Billie Eilish. There was, who else was there? There was Coldplay, the Beatles, everybody that you never expected. Dr. Dre, you never expected to hear that at church. I get that. But we talked about this because music, it shapes us. It brings us back to a memory, and it connects us. It gives us motivation and inspires us. But worship music is fundamentally no different than the way that music moves us, because it moves us closer to the heart of God. In fact, Eugene Peterson, he describes worship like this. He says, we can act ourselves into a new way of feeling much quicker than we can feel ourselves into a new way of acting. Let that one sink in for a second. Worship is an act that develops feelings for God, not a feeling for God that is expressed in an act of worship. When we obey the command to praise God in worship, our deep essential need to be in relationship with God is nurtured. So worship, it's not about us. Like, we are not the central figure in worship. It's about who God is. And we learn that when we can move towards God during worship. And we move towards God because our hearts are stirred and we start to love God. We start to understand and experience God. So worship is not about our style, our preference. Like, some of you last week came up to me and you're like, whoa, how come the Beatles made the cut but Weird Al didn't? I was like, Weird Al? Who's listening to Weird Al? Like, what is going on? Like, you need to, Hootie and the Blowfish, right? Or the Rolling Stones. Like, who would you have said that I left out in that mega mix? Who's your guy? Lionel Richie. Okay, somebody said Lionel Richie. Anybody else? Who? Beastie Boys. Anybody else? Zach Bryan. Okay, all these people. But here's the difference. Worship isn't about our taste. You guys can be like, man, your music stinks, right? Like, that's what every generation says about the generation before them, by the way. But worship isn't about that. Worship is not about your taste or your style. It's about God and building the relationship with him. We don't walk out of service and say, man, that was terrible. Because you know what? They didn't play my song. They didn't play it in my style. They didn't play the version that I like. Because worship is not meant to satisfy you. Worship is meant to move you towards God and his plan for your life. And so this week, we're going to dive into the song called Firm Foundation. We just sung it. It's by CODY, CARNES, and Maverick City. Some of you listed this as your favorite song. And I get it because there's so much to talk about here. One of the key lines in this song, it says this, I'm not held by my own strength because I've built my life on Jesus. It's got me thinking this week about the things that we build our lives on. Like, what is it that we center our lives around? And what are some of the things I've built my life on? In years gone by, Tiffany and I, when we were first married, we probably would have defined ourselves as being, newlyweds. And so we would say, oh, we're kind of building our lives on that. And then quickly, Noah came along and things got a little bit more complicated. And so our life got built on that. And then we started thinking, okay, how can we invest in our future? And so we started to flip houses. We would live in that house while we would work on it. There'd be plastic everywhere, dust going all over the place. And so we would work on these houses with the intention of making it a space that somebody else would want to buy in the future. And so I became the Mr. Fix-It guy. Like, I started to wrap my identity in the fact that there wasn't a project that I couldn't tackle. Like, I've ripped walls out. I've built closets. I've, laid tile and redone bathrooms. I've taken down a load-bearing wall and found out that it was a load-bearing wall. And so, I figured out how to put things back and all of that kind of stuff. And we made the decision, like, this is what we're going to do. And this became not just an investment, it became a part of my identity. This is not my tool bench, but it's similar. Just a couple less alternators laying around. But I know what these tools are, and I know how to use them, and I know how to fix things. And so I don't like it when I come across a situation that I'm unable to fix. Like, that just kind of irks me. It bothers me. It gets into me. And I hate calling somebody to fix it, not because I don't want to pay them. It's because I feel that there's some kind of inadequacy in me if I can't do that. Now, before you think I'm crazy, whoa, this guy's weird, like he's got some, strange identity problems. Have you ever seen anybody that's built their life on money or wealth? Anybody? Yeah, probably. You've been to, Longboat Key, and if you live in Longboat Key, it's not a judgment. It's a reality. But the problem with building your life on money, this is a problem. If you build your life on money, financial instability, job loss, stock market, all of these things can quickly erode wealth, and money can't buy lasting happiness or peace. Not to mention that 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." Maybe that's not your problem. Maybe people that have built their life on their image, beauty, and they would say physical appearance. Obviously, I have done very well in this department. I'm kidding. But we see this all the time. We're marketed in this way. Like, you should build your life in this capacity. You need to look like this. You need to dress like this. You need to act like this. And I'm telling you this, that aging is coming for all of us. Illness, accidents can drastically change one's physical appearance. And if that is what your life is built upon, it's going to be a problem. It's going to let you down, let alone to tell you that Proverbs 31:30 says, "Charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." Or what about building your life around pleasure and entertainment? Anybody do that? Not to really prod, but how many subscription services do you have on your television? Probably a few, right? And like, what is that pushing towards? That's comfort, entertainment, entertain us. We want to be entertained. We should have things at all time. And what does Proverbs 21:17 say? Whoever loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and olive oil will never be rich. In other words, your life will not be built well, because no one builds a life hoping to watch it fall apart. Nobody. And yet we see this happen all the time. Right? Like, you know the game Jenga, where you're trying to move some bricks around and you're trying to kind of build your life a little bit, and what ends up happening is that eventually the game is over when the tower topples. And what ends up happening in our lives when our tower topples is that we can find ourselves with emotional instability. We find ourselves that when the foundation starts to crumble, that what ends up happening is that we start wondering if our self-worth is actually worth anything. We can have an identity crisis. Like I said, that weird, I'm the fix-it guy. Well, what happens when you can't fix it anymore? Who are you? You can have broken relationships. If you have centered your life around the relationship or a relationship, and then what happens when it gets pulled out from under you, your life can fall apart. You can have some spiritual emptiness where something inside of us is just begging for more meaning, more value, more fulfillment. And we realize that it's not cutting it. We're not cutting it. And you wonder, how are we going to do this, right? See, this is not a new problem. This problem has been around for centuries. This is thousands of years. In fact, Jesus talks about this problem in his very famous message. It's the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. I like to call it the Message on the Mountain. And he had a big crowd in front of him, and he starts teaching about how to build your life. And he says things like, let me talk to you about being the salt and the light on the earth and the world around you. He teaches us about how to deal with things like anger and lust. And he talks about divorce and loving your enemies and giving to the needy and worrying and so much more. And at the very end of all of his teaching, he summarizes it with this one big thought. And he says this, he says, you can build your life in one of two ways. You ultimately have two options. One is you can build your life on me and my teachings, or two, you can build your life on your own for your own. That's your choice. You get to build the way that you want. Look at Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. He says, but there's a caveat. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. So in this scenario, Jesus is saying that we're all builders. We're all building something in our life. And you're building something of your life or with your life. And Jesus says that there's two people. Everybody's building. Everybody's building a house, and that house represents your life. This passage of scripture is not actually about what to do when anxiety hits. This is not a teaching on how to deal with temptation. It's a baseline approach to life. Like Jesus is actually laying out here, how do we live our life? How do we live our life in every phase of our life? Whether you're in high school or college, or you're starting out in your career or starting a family, or you're winding down your career, or you are watching as your grandchildren and maybe even great-grandchildren are growing up. Wherever you are, this is a baseline on how to live your life. Look at this situation. We got two builders, two homes, but one circumstance that happens to all of them. Rain came down, the floodwaters rose, and the wind blew from all directions. In other words, they're getting pressure from every direction. Anybody feel that ever? Like you're like, whoa, this is crazy, like everything that's going on. I've got kid problems, I got work problems, I got money problems, I got spouse problems, I got my spouse's parents' problems, and how much more can I possibly have thrown at me? And it just stacks up and stacks up. It can get to the point where you say, if something doesn't happen, I'm going to have a meltdown. There will be a full-on crash. The song that we sang, Firm Foundation, that needs to be on your summer playlist because there is so much there, so much rich theology, some great reminders. In fact, firm foundation, but most importantly, Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 7, it reminds us that we must focus on our foundation. You've got to focus on the things that you are building your life on. What you're building your life in and with and for is good. Like, these things are not bad. In fact, I was thinking just yesterday, like, what is it that I'm building my life, like in my life? You know, like some of the hobbies, some of the things that I like to do, some of those types of things. What is it that I'm building? They're not bad, but they can become problematic because you have to build on a foundation. In fact, I'd say this thing, your life can only rise to the level that your foundation can support it. Okay? It's like you can only build so much in your life based upon the foundation that you have because your foundation in life is critical for your life and it can't change. It's hard to talk about foundation because most of us, we have never even seen the foundation that your home is built on, right? Like it's just there. It's already there. But if you're wondering what is the foundation in your life, let me give you this kind of picture. This might even be a good test for you. So in 2005, there was Hurricane Katrina, and Hurricane Katrina blew through and it just devastated. And we were living in New Jersey in a small church. We got about 8 guys together. We said, let's fly down. We're gonna do whatever we can to help these people. And so we went down and we saw, we saw everything that was going on there. And I saw this just concrete slab with just a wrought iron handrail. That's it. There wasn't even any debris left around it. It's just all it was a foundation, was a slab. And I thought, this image has been seared into my head. And I just think today, like, if you're wondering, like, how do I focus on my foundation or what is my foundation? What if something came through, category 5, category 6, whatever, a major storm came through and just blew it all of this stuff? What would be left? What would be the footprint that's left in your life? What would be the thing that you say, oh, I've been building on that? Is it, money? Is it wealth? Is it image? Is it, comfort? Is it appearance? Is it relationships? All of that. Like, you have got to think about that because every one of us, we're building a life. And the problem is when we build our lives, we're just building it as we go. Like, we're building it in day by day, week by week, and we've got to have a plan. When we built out this space here at Hope City, we had a roll of plans that was so tremendously thick because we knew that we were not going to let any contractor just walk in and say, I think we put a wall over here. That looks good, right? Like, that should be fine. Or let's put some AC in here. Or let's figure this out. No, we paid a ton of money to have plans drawn by an engineer, by a masterful planner that put it all together, that said, this is how this room is going to work. In fact, this room has a load calculation of how many people per square foot, how much AC that needs to be pumped in here so that it doesn't end up feeling hot and sweaty and everybody wants to run out of here, right? Like, there's somebody that thought that through. There's no way that we're just going to let somebody say, whatever you want to do. What is the plan for your life? Like, what do you hope to build? Many of us can answer that question. We say, I want to build a career. I want to build a family. I want to build a legacy of wealth. But what you build on, your foundation is critical. So you better focus on your foundation. Listen to these lyrics we just sung. He said, I've still got joy in the chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense, that I won't be going under because I'm not held by my own strength. I've built my life on Jesus. I've built my life on Jesus. So figure it out. What's your foundation? And focus on building on the right foundation. It's what's most important. Jesus said that the rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew against that house, and yet it didn't fall because it had its foundation on the rock. The storms will come, and the storms will pass. No storm lasts forever. I just want you to hear me say that. No storm will last forever. You might be stuck in a storm. You might be saying, listen, Peter, I could talk to you for hours. How long do you have? I can talk to you about a storm. I can talk to you about category 4 and 5. I know about rainfall. I know about flooding. I know about wind coming from every which way. How long do you have? But I just want to remind you, no storm lasts forever. But even more importantly, when you've built your life on the foundation of Jesus, storms will come, but they will not shake you. They're not going to shake you. In the last 2 months, I've been pretty vulnerable with you guys about some of the storms that have happened in my life, some of the storms that have happened in the life of our church. And, you know, I've weathered some of these storms. And I'm in a unique position now to be able to talk about them. For a long time, I just couldn't even talk about it. Like, I was in the midst of so much turmoil. You know that about 2 months ago, I was in the hospital for just under a week and in tons of pain and long recovery and all this kind of stuff. And so personally, we've walked through some storms here at church. We talked to you about, made you aware of some of the situations that have happened to us, some theft of money by a contractor that set us back tremendously, the ongoing stress of that. In the last 3 years, I have changed. This storm changed who I am as a person. It changed the very nature of who I am. And what I walk away from after that, I can step outside and say, first off, storms come, but storms do go. They pass. And I would tell you that I can talk about God's faithfulness all day long. In fact, I'm going to spend the rest of my life talking about how faithful God is. When we found out that the contractor wasn't going to follow through on what he said he would and wouldn't deliver and all these kinds of things, and we unraveled it to be an even greater problem than that. It was in the midst of when the electrical was being installed and there was no lights in the space. I will never walk into this space and flick on a light switch and not think about God's faithfulness. It's just illuminating God's faithfulness to us as a church, to me in my life. And I just got to talk about God's faithfulness. I shared with you about how God was so faithful through the whole process, but also faithful to complete the process. I talked about how God's given us an aggressive vision and passion to pay back the debt that we owe, to finish this space. 2 people that are incredibly generous, gave us a private loan to see this through. And to date, I wanted to report back that we have given collectively $55,876 towards the balance of that, which is amazing, and we're so grateful. That leaves us with $133,000 left on that. And yet God is faithful. I can say God is faithful in the midst of that. God has done miracles in the past. And I'm telling you this, why should we be surprised by his next miracle? Don't be. Like, when you see God move in the past, why are we surprised when he moves in the future? In fact, I'd tell you the best predictor of what God might do in the future is what he has done in the past. This morning I woke up feeling weird. And my wife, she has so much discernment, so much wisdom. She just looked at me and she said, God has brought us through so much. He's not going to leave you now. Like, it's just not going to happen. Look at what God has done and do not be surprised by the next miracle. As we pursue the finances that have been taken from our church, that feels like a storm that's brewing. But God's brought us through storms already, and he's going to bring us through this one as well. You will have storms. In fact, Jesus says this, and he says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In me, if I'm your foundation, you have peace. In this world, you will have trouble. It's not, you might have trouble. No, you will, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Storms will come, but they can't shake you. When your foundation is in Christ, you've placed yourself in the control of the one who overcomes everything. So there is nothing that can overcome you. There's no situation that he can't rescue or redeem in your life. So what is threatening you right now? What is the storm that's swirling around you, or the flood water that's rising? What is that? And just, you need to tell yourself that this storm may rage, but I've got my foundation set. I'm not going to be shaken. My foundation is built on the one who overcomes. This song has got to be on your summer playlist. Because there's so much here. There's so much good. Like, just look at these lyrics. Rain came, wind blew, but my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm going to make it through. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through all generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. But that doesn't mean you do nothing, right? Like, that doesn't mean you just say, well, okay, God, you just do your thing, right? No, remember that Jesus is talking about two builders. That means that they are actively building their life just as you and I are. You know, we have to do something. You know, it's not going to be built for you, but what builder did Jesus call wise? Jesus said this, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts it into practice is like the wise man who built his house on the rock. The one who followed the plans and put them into practice. Because plans are useless if you don't use them. If they just stay in the planning stage, they are absolutely pointless. Like this, I've got plans to marry her. Do you know what she's thinking? Go ahead and do it already, right? Like, this is what I've got plans to clean up the house. It's not going to clean itself. Like, just because you got plans to clean the house doesn't mean that it's going to be clean. Or I've got plans to kick this addiction. Just because you have plans to kick it doesn't mean that you have kicked it. Plans must be put into practice. And this is true in all aspects of our life, but it's also true in our faith. Like, we've got to lean in. Last week we said that relationship is greater than religion. God's not looking for more religious people, by the way. Like, if you're new here at Hope City, we are not trying to create more religious people. We're not interested in that. In fact, you know, we do have service every Sunday at 9, every Sunday at 10:30. That might appear like kind of religious, like it happens religiously every week, but we are not trying to become religious. We're trying to encounter God and have a relationship with him, because we know that the more that you love Jesus, the more that you will respond and follow through with what Jesus says. James 1:22, he says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, do what it says. And it's good that you're here. It's good that you're listening. It's good that you're paying attention to the inner kind of spiritual craving and hunger in your life, but plans must be put into practice. It's going to shape your life. This ensures that the foundation of your life that you're building on will be unshakable. 7 years ago, Tiffany and I had moved here with our kids to Florida. We were from New Jersey, kind of North Jersey, and moving down here to Florida. This was all new to us, and tropical paradise, right? Like, we loved it. And we had never experienced a hurricane. And so here comes Hurricane Irma, and the spaghetti model is going all over the place. And at the time, our church was meeting at Tatum Ridge Elementary School out on Palmer Boulevard. And the spaghetti model was going, you know, here, there, everywhere, Tampa, Naples, Sarasota. And then there was one model that in the last, as we're glued to the Weather Channel, there's one model that red line goes directly over, and it says on the map, Tatum Ridge Elementary School. Like, it is intersecting the place that my world revolves around, right? And we were gone. We were out of here, baby. Like, I'm telling you, we couldn't have turned the TV off. We were already in Georgia by the time that screen flickered down. We were gone. We were flying up 75. They opened up all the lanes, the shoulders. We were like, wow, like gone. I'm telling you, absolutely. And here's the thing. We had no experience. We had no idea what to do. Our friends were like, I thought you were Floridians. Wussies, like, you're out of here. What's going on? And no, but I'm telling you, we didn't have a plan. We didn't have a plan. We didn't know what to do. I didn't have what it takes to weather the storm, but we're ready now. I got a couple flashlights. We're good. No, here's honestly, truthfully, I know what to do. I've got a box in my garage that's just ready to be pulled off the shelf. Storm's coming, no problem. Down, boom. I've got an exorbitant amount of gas cans that, like, I could run that generator for years to come, right? I know how to wire my generator back into my panel box. I told you I fix things. That's my identity. I know what to do. I've got a plan. We need a plan in our life. Like, you need a plan for your life. You need to plan on what you're building and what you're building upon. I said it before, like these things are not bad. What you're building in your life is not bad, but it can be catastrophic if it's not built on the right foundation. You may have weathered some storms in your life, and they may have knocked you back some. But when your foundation is on Jesus, you might be knocked back, but you will never be knocked out. He's got you. He's got you in his hand. And the problem is that you cannot build the right life on the wrong foundation. It's impossible. You will always end up with a game of Jenga that's just resting so precariously on one brick that if that one brick falls, your life, boom, it just falls apart. But when you build your life on Jesus, if I had built this on this stage and on this floor, you can stomp here all you want. You can do everything you want. That's not going anywhere. And the same is true in your life. If you build your life on Jesus, you can stack whatever you want, and it's not going anywhere. But if your foundation is built on anything else that can be temporary, that can be blown away, that could be just, given time and it's done, it's worn out, you're going to be disappointed. You got to build properly to live properly. When you choose to build your life on the rock, on Christ, there's no better way. 4 ways you can build your life I want to encourage you with is this, to find the foundation. 1, you got to connect with God daily. Whether that's prayer, worship, reading his word, you got to connect with God daily. You got to commit to church, community. Soon we got our Connect group starting up. I've heard stories about sisterhood tables recently and the joy that's of women connecting with one another. We got men's groups. We got Hope City Youth, and you heard about what's going on with Hope City Kids this week. Like, community is a big part of this church. You got to connect to and commit to church community. You got to serve others regularly. There is nothing that gets your attention off of yourself quicker than serving other people. Maybe Kicks for Kids, you want to sign up and serve there. It is a great way we partner with Wilkinson Elementary. I promise you, if you serve on that day, on August 3rd, you will leave there with a greater appreciation for your own life and for the ways that God has taken care of you. And you got to trust God relentlessly. If you're in a storm, hear me say it, it won't last forever. But in the midst of that storm, trust God with everything you have. Hold on, because he's got you. He's got you. Maybe today you realize your foundation is cracked or crumbling or non-existent. I want to invite you to think about these words from John 3:16 and 17. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life." In other words, there is nothing ever that can dismantle and dismember you. God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. See, we're not talking about foundations of happiness or your career. We're talking about the foundations of eternity for the rest of your life. And I want to tell you that trusting in Jesus changes everything. Here's how you start to build on that foundation. You got to admit that you've been building your life on your own for your own, and it's not working out. The Bible calls that sin, and as sinners, we need forgiveness. We need forgiveness from those things. And through Jesus, the penalty of sin has been taken care of. It's been paid for. And all you got to do is ask God to invite God to be the Lord of your life and say, "Jesus, I trust that you died on the cross for me, that you were buried in the tomb, and that 3 days later you rose to life so that I could be brought to life." And watch as your foundation begins to be strengthened and God gives you purpose and a plan for your life.